Hello again. Welcome back to Skill On. This series of training videos in the Smart Life Professional English Programme is dedicated to meeting skills, and in particular this video is dedicated to active participation in meetings. So to begin with, we're going to look at some of the contexts in which you need to actively participate, and let's have a look at some of the contexts which I think many of you are familiar with. First of all, one of the types of meetings are the European projects and international cooperation. And possibly particularly for the European projects, these meetings often may be longer than some of the other meetings, and they're dealing more with project management and developing a project over a time frame, and they will probably give you the opportunity to build up relationships with the other partners who maybe are also collaborating on other projects that you're involved with, and so you develop possibly quite a close relationship, and your language may become more informal. Of course, the context is always professional, but there will be perhaps a change of level of formality, which is nice and satisfying and rewarding. Another type of meeting which can be quite demanding are when you get visits from delegations. And I know because of Emilia-Romagna's reputation for good management of projects, you receive a number of delegations from different parts of the world interested in different aspects of what the Emilia-Romagna regional government does. And in these contexts, I think sometimes you need to give overviews or summaries of some of your experience, and probably you'll be asked a lot of questions about the particular experience that is the focus of the delegation's interest. And so you may be called upon just to participate in a small part of the delegation's visit when a particular aspect that you have experience in is being discussed. So there could be some technical aspects, or generally giving an overview, as I said, of experience. Then the third type of meeting could be meetings with suppliers, because all the time, inevitably, Emilia-Romagna regional government is needing to procure services and equipment and systems, and so these meetings with suppliers will be normally quite technical, where you're going to need to explain exactly the needs and requirements of your service, your directorate, or the regional government as a whole, and then to ask questions and understand the answers when the suppliers, remember supplier I fornitori, when they answer your searching questions, to make sure that what they're offering really meets and responds to the needs of your directorate or the regional government. And you may need some commercial skills in these meetings too. So these are just three types of meetings. Probably there are others as well, but I think these are probably the most important ones. So active participation involves expressing your opinion on what is being discussed. Expressing your opinion in Italian, you're going to use words like secondo me or per me. So remember that it's not possible to translate those, unfortunately. But here are some expressions that you can use. So one simple one, I think. I think that is a good idea. Or in our experience, where you want to speak on behalf of your directorate or your service or your department, we find that this type of approach is not so effective. Or in my opinion, if you want to give your own personal opinion, the best proposal is to consider the long-term impact of this strategy, thinking of the long term of something, expressing your personal opinion. So here we've looked at 3 possible ways that you can give your opinion in a meeting. So now we're going to look at some ways where you can respond to when somebody else proposes something, and you can say if you agree with them or not. The simple way is to use the verb to agree. So I agree with you, or we agree with them. It's a simple verb to use, and very useful and positive. And the third example is where you agree to do something. So you're not agreeing with a person, but you're agreeing to do something. So we agree to collect more data on this aspect, or we agree to write a report on the project so far, when you're agreeing to an action. And another example here, if you're speaking about what one of your colleagues agrees to do, who perhaps is not able to participate in the meeting, he agrees to prepare the report. And when you're speaking on behalf of everybody, when you've finished discussing that particular point, you could say, okay, we all agree on that point, we can put it in the minutes. Lo possiamo mettere sul verbale. So to agree on a point, to agree on an action, but to agree to if it's with a verb. Right, let's move on. So next we're going to look at a very important point, as I've said in previous training videos, that if, and it's inevitable, it will happen, if somebody says something and you're not sure that you've understood what exactly they're trying to say, you can state what you think they've said. So if I understand correctly, you think that we should organise another meeting next week. And so you're saying what you think is what they said, and you're giving the person to say yes or no. Or another expression like that is, are you saying that you have some reservations? Which is like saying, are you saying that you have some doubts? So you're checking if the person is not happy with the proposal. Or do you mean you think that is too expensive? Vuoi dire, do you mean? So these are very useful ways to check comprehension, and it's fundamental, because how can you agree on something in a meeting if there's doubt about what people are saying? So it's perfectly okay and necessary to check comprehension in a meeting. So next we're going to look at 3 other expressions where you can clarify a point. So you think you've understood what the person has said. So you find that improving cycle routes is reducing road traffic in your area. Am I right? So you're checking it. Am I right? Ho ragione, è giusto? Or another way of saying that, is that correct? These expressions are very useful and very simple. And remember, look again at the question form with the inversion. Am I right? Is that correct? Good. So, moving on now, we're going to look at how you can propose another activity. So perhaps what the other people in the meeting have proposed, you're reasonably happy with, but you're not convinced. And you think you have another idea which could be more effective or more feasible, fattibile. So I think we should consider an increased focus on waste recycling. We should consider, dovremmo considerare, an increased focus or more focus on waste recycling, riciclaggio degli scarti. Or another example, we believe it would be more effective to increase accessibility to to libraries and digital documents. Again, we believe or we think it would be or it could be. Would be sarebbe, could be potrebbe essere. Both of those could be useful. More effective. Effective, più efficace. To increase access or accessibility to libraries or digital information. And then again, if you want to bring in the opinion of one of your colleagues who's not there, Tom thinks we should plant many more trees. We should, dovremmo. We should plant many more trees. We should increase the urban green. We should improve the air quality in our cities. So these are all ways where you can make a counter-proposal politely but clearly. Now, moving on, let's look at some other examples, and this expression we've seen in the past because it's so useful, so I want to focus on it again, using that how about. So when one person has made one counter-proposal and you want to come in with another option, so we can use this how about or what about, and the verb goes into the ing form. So the first example, how about collecting more information? Or how about contacting some experts from other European countries? Or using what about, but it's exactly the same thing. You can choose which one you prefer. What about extending the trial period? Or what about investing more money in tackling some of the plant diseases and the pests which are causing problem to our agriculture? There are many examples that you can use depending on the context that you're working in. So a nice expression, I think, how about and what about, with the ing part of the verb. Next, we're going to move on, and importantly, we're going to look at different expressions you can use to stop a discussion, to ask somebody a question. And these are polite ways to ask a question. Notice that we say ask a question. Many people would like to say to make a question, fare una domanda, but remember in English, ask. It's strange, it's like saying chiedere una domanda. So, I'd like to ask a question, if I may. Or, very polite, may I ask a question about that last point, or about what you were talking about? Or thirdly, could I ask you a question about your experience? All of these are very similar and they're all polite. Slightly more informal would be can I? And often it becomes can I ask you a question? But more polite and more professional, could I ask you a question? Or the most polite, may I ask you a question? Or I'd like to ask you a question. So these are going to be useful because questions are so important to clarify and consolidate certainty about the various topics. Next, we're going to look at the difference between two types of questions. In the Mediterranean, it's normal and it's appreciated if your questions are very direct, and that's great. However, if the meeting involves people from some other parts of Europe or people from the Far East or some other countries, it can be more polite, it can be softer to use what we call an indirect question. So rather than how many people participated in the event, could I ask you how many people participated in the event? It makes the question much more much sweeter in some ways, but it may seem strange, but some people from Northern Europe can really prefer the more indirect questions. Or how did you achieve the result is the direct form of the question, or could I ask you how you achieved that result. Do you remember retrieve is raggiungere? Could I ask you, or I'd like to know, or could you tell me? There are a lot of ways that you can begin your indirect question. Just remember that you need to change the format of the structure. So rather than how did you receive that result, could I ask you how you achieved the result? So the grammar changes slightly, but with practice it all becomes perfect. Good. So now let's look at an aspect which inevitably will arise. To arise is to come up, to happen, to occur, to arise. In many meetings is that you will probably be asked, or you might be asked a question that you either are not able to answer, or that you don't want to take the responsibility of answering because it's not something that you deal with yourself, and you haven't been given the okay to speak about that particular aspect. So I think it's always, if somebody asks a question which you don't feel you're able to answer at that moment, it's always nice to say, thank you for that question, or that's a good question. I don't deal with those aspects myself. Do you remember to deal with occuparsi di? I don't deal with those aspects, or I don't deal with that topic myself, or I'm not involved in that aspect of the project personally or myself, but, and this way you come in with a solution, but I'll speak to the person who manages it or who is involved, and I'll email you the answer. And the more informal version is I'll find out, using a nice phrasal verb, mi informerò. I think it's a really nice expression, that. Mi informerò. I'll find out, ricaverò l'informazione, and I'll let you know. Le farò sapere. So it shows a proactive engagement. So even if you can't answer the question, you will do your best to find an answer, if possible. So these expressions can be useful, I think. And next, moving on, let's look at some of the expressions that you can use to express agreement. So here we have the positive word. Yes, we can agree to do that. So this is a simple expression. We can, or you can just say, we agree to do that. We can, meaning we have the possibility to agree to do that. The second one is you're agreeing, but maybe there is a condition. So we could agree to carry out a survey on water use, or the quantity of water wasted, acqua sprecato. So we could, potremmo concordare. Do you remember to carry out is a survey is indagine. To carry out is like saying eseguire. So you can say to carry out a survey, to conduct or to do a survey on the water usage or the quantity of wasted water, acqua sprecato, if we had more time or if we had a little more money to do it. So you're agreeing, but with a condition. Now, moving on again, we've got some other examples of expressing agreement and finding agreement. So the first expression is simple and it's nice. Yes, that would be possible for us. More formal, that would be acceptable. It's not exactly enthusiastic, sarebbe accettabile, but in some contexts, it could be the correct expression. And the last one is in a more informal expression. Sure, that would be fine. Or sure, that would be okay. Or sure, no problem even. And of course it's interesting because the level of formality of language is constantly becoming more informal. You need to be a little bit more careful when you're writing, but in a meeting, spoken language is generally becoming a little bit more informal, which is good, I think. Right, at this point, Indicating time is up because, as we've said on various occasions, time is of the essence. Time is very important. So this word, right, we must bring the meeting to an end now, meaning we must stop the meeting. Or so, to conclude, and here you can sum up, you can go over who is going to do what and what has been agreed. So to conclude, we have agreed to do more research on water usage and the different ways of improving our environment. Our Spanish colleagues are going to do some research on measures to improve air quality. Measures, misure, to improve, migliorare, air quality. Listen to the pronunciation, air quality. It's not hair, it's air, senza la H. Then when you note something, remember you can always use the expression, can I put that in the minutes? Lo posso mettere in verbale? And then to conclude, I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions. I think that's a nice expression. And also, we look forward to continuing this discussion. That expression, we look forward to, followed by the ing, you can use at the end of a meeting, at the end of a telephone call, at the end of an informal email, and at the end of a letter. Even we look forward to receiving the payment. It's a positive way to engage and to move towards the future. It's a very flexible expression and it's really good. You can make it more informal by saying we're looking forward to, or even super informal, looking forward to. But maybe if we want to be professional standard, it's better we look forward to. Then to finish, goodbye. And it's very nice to, if it's say Friday afternoon, just to say something nice, have a nice weekend, or have a pleasant evening, or have a good meal, or if somebody has travelled, hoping the COVID-19 finally will be resolved, have a safe journey. Those are nice expressions. So at this point, what we need to do now is to look at 3 strategies to participate in meetings, and in particular at 3 tips. What's the first tip? And surprise, surprise, we've said it again and again, listen carefully. And listening, as we've said, in terms of communication is so fundamental. To understand exactly what people are saying, and also to listen for beyond just the straight words. If there's interest in more collaboration in the future, perhaps, or some ideas for a new project, listening can really open new doors, as well as being courteous and respectful to participants, making sure that you're taking on board the ideas which the participants are expressing. And in fact, this is just exactly what I was saying, because we want to give everyone the chance to express their opinion, because we want the benefit of everyone's experience and their ideas, even if we don't agree with it. We want to understand, if possible, because the more dialogue there is, the more potential for collaboration and cooperation and understanding in a meeting context, which is a great context for reaching that type of objective. And certainly keep the meeting on track and finish on time, particularly if you have people from Northern Europe. But not only, I think now more and more people want to have a meeting which starts and finishes at a specific time, and they know that 10 minutes after the meeting is scheduled to finish, they can begin another meeting. So respect for time is fundamental, so keep a track on it. Now we're going to look at 3 factors to strengthen communication skills. Strengthen, look at that TH there, strengthen, meaning to make stronger, to make your communication skills stronger. One of them and I think many of you will agree because we love English. However, there's one problem with English, is the pronunciation. If you look at the words and you try to pronounce the word, reading it, it's chaos. So if you're going to be participating in a meeting, make sure that you check the pronunciation of any keywords, either using Word Reference. It's a website where you can type in the word and you can hear the pronunciation, or Google. There are various places, but it's a good thing, particularly the keywords that you're going to use in what you want to say, what's important for you to communicate in that meeting. Second point is ask questions to involve. Questions fundamental, and it's an opportunity to bring in, to involve everybody, so at the end of the meeting people didn't think, well, I don't know why I was here, nobody asked me anything, but next time I don't think I'll participate. So involve everybody. The best way to do that is ask questions. And last but not least, use and read body language. This is not always so easy, but for example, the movement of eyebrows, the stance of a person, the posture of a person, the way they move their hands, all of these can give you signals and help you understand if a person has doubt. If they have a doubt, ask them if they have a question. So it's very useful to use body language to bring in and people whose body language seems to be a little bit negative or absent. So you can read it and actively bring them in. So we've looked at some ways to make your participation pretty active, I think you'll agree. And in the next training video, on the other hand, we are going to be looking at some strategies and guidelines for participating in online meetings, which for many people have become the norm, and not always without blood, sweat and tears. Sangue, sudore e lacrime. Because online meetings are quite challenging, but I think we're becoming familiar with them. Telephone skills, and then skills for summarising and for ending any type of meeting. So I hope you found this useful. Look forward to seeing you in the last and final training video in this series. Goodbye for now.